Suzuki has seen its popularity grow in recent years through its low cost and cheap to run models that also have a decent amount of personality in with them. Suzuki also sees that its future lies with partnerships, and that's why it is linked up with Toyota to create some models that have shared underpinnings but with different characters. And that brings us to this. It's the updated Suzuki Swace, which shares its underpinnings with the Toyota Corolla. Suzuki obviously has put its own little spin on this vehicle, but why should you be looking at the Suzuki, and why should you be considering it over another compact estate car? Well, that's what we've come today to find out. The exterior design of the Suzuki Swace is, well, it's pretty unassuming really. This car in its silver shade looks like it would blend in any environment, but it's worth mentioning that all cars do get plenty of equipment. For instance, these LED daytime running lights are included as standard on all models. And around the back, you might notice that the Suzuki badge has rather cleverly been positioned above the Toyota one with a new panel. We would have liked to have seen that slightly better integrated, but we can see why it would be done in order to save money. The interior of the Swace kind of matches the exterior really. It's relatively unassuming, but everything is done to a good standard. I like the material quality throughout. It all feels nice and robust and well put together. And it's worth mentioning that all cars get this 8-inch screen regardless of which specification you opt for. And it gets both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, the former being wireless and the latter being required through a wired connection. It's not too bad to operate. It's a little bit clunky in terms of how it moves about, and the icons and graphics aren't the sharpest, but it gets the job done. In the middle, we've got two relatively compact cup holders. I don't think you're going to be getting big cups or mugs in there. And then there's a small storage area in there. We've got a USB-C charger and a 12-volt socket too. I also kind of like the fact that the heating buttons for the seats are very prominent and very solid. It almost seems like they've been completely over-engineered. But ahead of those, we also have a wireless charging pad. So the level of equipment that you get in here is very impressive, and I like the way it's all brought together in quite a well-finished and solid feeling package. It's all relatively basic in the back of the Swace. I haven't really got anywhere to put anything. There are some very, very small side pockets, and on the driver's chair, there's no seat back pockets. There's just one on the passenger side, so you've got a bit of a short straw if you're sitting here. Space-wise, it's not bad at all. I've got loads of room for my feet, and my knee room is good too. And actually, because of the concave style of the roof, I've got plenty of headroom too. There are no charging ports in the middle though, so you might have a bit of a row about who gets to charge up their phone. And in the middle, there is an armrest, which has two small cup holders, but there's not a lot else to talk about there. In terms of ISOFIX points, we've got one on each of the outer seats, and thankfully they're nice and easy to access because they've just got these small plastic covers on. There's actually not a lot to talk about in the back of the Swace here, but if you do want space and you do want robustness, because I think these hard-wearing plastics are going to stand up to a lot of abuse, then we're pretty much on the money. But I feel like there could be some slightly more useful options, such as even just a charging or a 12-volt socket in the middle. Open the Swace's rather heavy boot lid, and you've got 596 litres of boot space to play with. And as you can see, it's quite deep and it's nicely square. So those larger items are going to be nice and easy to get in. There's also not too much of a lip, so heavier objects aren't going to prove too much of a task to load in. I also like the fact that the Swace has a massive wheel well section, so you do get some extra space down there too. It's worth mentioning, however, that if you are after the best possible boot space, then the Skoda Octavia estate continues to be one of the best options with 640 litres, and that by far exceeds the space that you get here. I will say that anyway, given the car's price, this is still very respectable. So, driving the Swace, what have we got to play with? Well, it'll come as no surprise that since it is based on a Toyota Corolla, that we've got the same engine as a Toyota Corolla. So we've got a 1.8 litre regular hybrid system, and you get around 138 brake horsepower combined with the electric motor and the petrol engine working together. That power is driven through a CVT gearbox, and I've said previously what I feel about CVT gearboxes. I'm not the biggest fan because they don't allow you to overtake or to gain a lot of speed without a heck of a lot of noise. So when you really step on it, you get a big flare of revs, and it just doesn't feel that comfortable. Having said that, the gearbox in the Swace feels pretty sorted, and out of the CVT gearboxes that I have driven, this feels like one of the better ones. Now, Suzuki says that you should be able to get just over 62 mpg. I feel like that might be slightly on the high figure. I've been driving it around a little bit and it's been getting 44.5. I think on the motorway that's going to improve quite considerably. And I have been testing it out and giving it a little bit of a going over. So those figures aren't entirely representative of what you'd be getting day to day, I don't think. And actually, the CVT gearbox, if you stop driving it like you want to go quickly and instead just lightly feather the throttle, and for instance around town, like where I am now, it's very relaxing and you get a decent amount of response actually. The engine just muscles away, and in fact at slower speeds this car will travel in EV only mode, so you can see a little icon on the dashboard letting you know that you're running off battery power for once. And that makes it quiet and that makes it refined when you're travelling at slower speeds. General visibility is good, though the rear screen is quite small, so there's almost like a letterbox section to look out of, and that's a bit of a pain, but that comes with that kind of estate fastback type of styling, so that's the trade-off you get when you have a car designed that way. You can't, of course, plug this car in. It's a regular hybrid, so it's using energy that would usually be lost when slowing down, and the engine will also be constantly trickling over into the battery to keep things topped up. It's not a plug-in hybrid, so you can't get a proper dedicated electric only range really. It's not like some of the larger plug-in hybrids that can do 30 or 40 miles on electric only power. This is more for slow speeds and for manoeuvring and for actually taking the edge off the emissions and improving efficiency by taking the load off the engine. I think quite a lot of the Toyota build quality is shining through here too. It feels nicely put together, there aren't any squeaks or rattles, and the general touch points that you're going through are very pleasant. So this steering wheel is nicely finished, and actually the weight that it has behind it is quite pleasant. When it comes to cornering, the Swace isn't bad at all. Now obviously I'm driving through a 30 limit at this point, so I'm not testing the outright handling capabilities of this car, but I've taken it down some of the busier lanes and some of the quicker corners that we've got in this area, and it's felt remarkably well tied down actually. I've been quite impressed by how it corners at speed. There's a slight firm edge to the ride, but it's not too intrusive, and certainly over some of the big potholes I've felt like it's dealt with them quite well actually. And also another good option that this car has is a dedicated B mode on the gear selector, which goes past drive and into B, and what that does is give you more regen braking. So for around town it will start to slow itself down. So there's a parked car ahead of me right now and I can just lift off the throttle and it will really start to slow the car down. Likewise, when I then go on the motorway, you can flick it back into D, and that allows it to coast more effectively, and that's what you want when you're travelling at high speeds. You don't want the car to be dragging itself back when you're on the motorway or on the dual carriage. You actually want it to coast a little bit because that's the most efficient state for it to be in. I actually find the Suzuki Swace quite endearing really. It's not overladen with gadgets or trinkets, but what it does do is bring space and practicality and an efficient driving setup for $28,999, which is an incredible $2,500 cheaper than the Toyota Corolla estate upon which it is based. So in my mind, I don't know why you wouldn't pick this if you were considering the Corolla. Against other cars in the market, it still stands up relatively strong, although there are some more practical options out there. However, for the money, I think that the Suzuki Swace does a remarkable job for itself. Thank you for watching this new car review on the Suzuki Swace for Motors.co.uk. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of this car. Would you pick this? Would you pick the Corolla, or would you go for something like a Skoda Octavia Estate instead? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel and click that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video.